All right, let's kick off this deep dive and travel back in time to Tsumeb, Namibia. Now, if you're thinking copper mines, you're not wrong.
Absolutely.
But this deep dive, it's not just about, digging an ore. We're going to uncover the lives of these Herdorf miners, German adventurers who, well, they crossed continents in the early 1900s.
It's a really fascinating story. Blend's economic opportunity and the sense of adventure. These miners, they weren't just looking for, a paycheck.
Right.
They were driven by wanderlust, this deep desire to explore the world.
Okay, so let's unpack this a bit. We're talking about skilled miners, leaving their homes, leaving their families, traveling thousands of miles to a place they probably knew very little about. What were the driving forces behind this migration?
Well, the promise of higher wages was a huge draw.
Right.
Imagine earning nearly 3 times what you could back home.
Yeah.
That kind of financial incentive, it would be hard to resist, especially for those facing, economic hardship in Germany at the time.
So money talks.
Yeah.
But you also mentioned this wanderlust. Was it just about filling their pockets? Or was there, something more, I don't know, romantic about the idea of heading to Africa?
I think it was a bit of both. Think about the image of the Berkman, the miner in German culture. They were tough, resourceful, and often, had that sense of adventure in their blood. Going to Africa, it would have been seen as a challenge,
Oh, yeah.
a test of their abilities, a chance to prove themselves in this new frontier.
It's like an early 20th century, I don't know, version of the gold rush. But instead of panning for gold, they're digging for copper in the heart of Africa.
Exactly. And speaking of copper, let's set the scene in Tsumeb. Imagine a place dominated by the Green Hill, this massive mound of malachite. That vibrant green copper mineral, surrounded by lush tambuti trees.
Oh, wow.
It must have been an incredible sight.
It sounds like something out of an adventure novel. This Green Hill was the heart of the Tsumeb mine, right?
Yes, and this mine, it was no small operation. It was run by the Otavi Minen und Eisenbahngesellschaft, or OMEG for short,
Right.
a German company that invested heavily in developing the mine.
Wow.
They even built a whole railway line just to transport the copper out of Tsumeb.
Talk about commitment. They were serious about getting that copper out. So we've got this incredible mineral deposit. We have a company willing to go all in. And then enter the Herdorf miners in 1910. Can you tell us about this first wave of miners?
These were skilled miners. Known for their hard work and adaptability, they brought with them a wealth of experience, from the mines of Herdorf, of course,
Right?
and a real determination to make a good living in this new land.
It must have been a shock to the system arriving in Tsumeb. Was it what they expected?
Well, the reality of life in Tsumeb was probably a far cry from what they imagined. We have first-hand accounts, like the one from Peter Uteneuer, a young miner who left his wife and family behind in 1914 to join the ranks in Tsumeb.
Okay, so this is where it gets really interesting. Uteneuer's story, it gives us a glimpse into the day-to-day lives of these miners, right? What was life actually like for them?
It was definitely tough.
Yeah.
The work was demanding, the living conditions were basic, and there were all sorts of challenges that came with being so far from home in a completely different culture.
I bet. What about Uteneuer's journey to Tsumeb? That must have been an adventure in itself.
Oh, absolutely. He documented his travels in vivid detail. Imagine the long train line across Europe, the first glimpse of the vast Namib Desert, encountering exotic wildlife for the first time.
Wow.
It must have felt like stepping into another world.
And then, just as he's getting settled, World War I breaks out.
Right.
What impact did the war have on Uteneuer and the other German miners in Tsumeb?
It was a turning point for them.
Yeah.
Even though Tsumeb was far from the battlefields, the war cast a long shadow over their lives. It affected communication with their families back home. It created tension within the community.
I can imagine.
And it raised all sorts of questions about their future.
Right.
In a world that was rapidly changing.
So amidst all of this, Uteneuer's working in the mine, sending money back home, trying to make a life for himself. What else do we learn from his account?
One thing that stands out is the strong sense of camaraderie among the German miners.
Yeah.
Especially those from Herdorf. They relied on each other for support, shared their joys and sorrows.
They had to.
They formed bonds that lasted a lifetime.
It makes sense. They were in a foreign land facing all sorts of challenges together. That shared experience, it must have forged some deep connections.
Exactly. And it wasn't all work and hardship. He also writes about his adventures, exploring the African bush, encountering fascinating wildlife. He even had a few close calls with dangerous animals, like the black mamba snake.
Wow, talk about a thrill seeker. So after years of hard work, adventure, Uteneuer eventually returns to Germany in 1921. Did he come home a rich man?
Sadly, no. The hyperinflation that dripped Germany after the war wiped out his savings, which he had painstakingly accumulated over 7 years.
Oh, no.
He'd risked everything, endured so much, and ultimately returned home with very little to show for it.
That's heartbreaking. But his story and the stories of these other Herdorf miners, they continue to fascinate us today.
Absolutely. They provide a window into a bygone era, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, and a reminder of the enduring allure of adventure and the pursuit of a better life.
And speaking of allure, we can't forget about those incredible minerals that came out of Tsumeb. Let's dive into that aspect of the story, shall we?
Let's. Tsumeb, it wasn't just any copper mine, it was a geological treasure trove.
Oh, wow.
Over 200 different minerals were found there.
Really?
Some of them unique to that location. It's a collector's paradise.
Now that's what I call striking it rich, at least in a geological sense. What were some of the standout minerals from Tsumeb?
Well, the variety was astounding. You had everything from the vibrant green malachite we mentioned earlier to beautiful azurite crystals, lead zinc ores like galena and cerussite, and even rarer minerals like germanite, which contains the element germanium.
It's mind-boggling to think about all those different minerals being formed in the same place. It must have been a sight to behold.
Absolutely. And you know what's fascinating?
What?
Many of those Tsumeb minerals, they're still treasured today, held in private collections and museums all over the world.
I bet there are some amazing specimens tucked away in Herdorf
Oh,
itself.
for sure.
After all, those miners must have brought back some souvenirs.
You're absolutely right. Imagine finding a box of Tsumeb minerals in your grandmother's attic, passed down through generations. It would be like holding a piece of history in your hand.
And for those who don't have family heirlooms from Tsumeb, they can always visit the Bergbaum Museum in Herdorf-Sassenroth, right?
Exactly. It's a great place to connect with this shared heritage, appreciate the incredible diversity of minerals that were found in Tsumeb. You might even find some specimens collected by the Herdorf miners themselves.
It's amazing to think that some of those minerals part have been handled by those same miners, like over a century ago. It really brings the past to life, doesn't it?
It certainly does. And it reminds us that the story of the Herdorf miners, it's not just confined to history books. It's a living legacy that continues to resonate in the minerals themselves.
Well said. Now, we've talked about Neuer's experience, but he wasn't the only Herdorf miner who braved the journey to Tsumeb. What about the others? What were their destinies?
Yes. Let's delve into the lives of the other miners, shall we? Each one had their own unique experiences, their own triumphs and tragedies.
So let's talk about these other Herdorf miners. Neuer's account, he mentions, well, quite a few names. What can you tell us about their experiences?
Oh, it's a fascinating mix of stories, really. Some miners, like Neuer's own brother, August, he spent several years in Tsumeb before returning to Germany. Others, like Wilhelm Order, they used their Tsumeb experience as like a stepping stone to advance their careers.
Interesting.
Werder, he actually went back to Germany around 1914 and ended up becoming a mine manager in the Harz Mountains.
That's interesting. So it seems like the skills they learned in Tsumeb were valuable back home. Did any of the miners stay in Africa, permanently?
Yes, some did. Emil Sander, for instance, he only spent a few months in Tsumeb before deciding to try his luck in the United States.
Wow.
He ended up settling there permanently.
It's a reminder that mining was this, global industry, and these skilled workers, they were in demand all over the world. It wasn't just about, going to Africa. It was about seeking opportunity wherever it could be found.
Precisely. These miners were part of a network that spanned continents, and their expertise, it was highly valued, but of course not every story had, a happy ending.
That's right. Neuer also mentions some tragic cases, like Joseph Schmick, who died in a mining accident just 3 days after arriving in Tsumeb.
It's a stark reminder of the dangers inherent in mining. Both then and now, these men, they faced risks every day.
Yeah.
Not only from accidents, but also from diseases. Neuer mentions this lung plague that swept through Tsumeb in 1918, claiming the lives of several Herdorf miners.
That must have been devastating, especially for those who are so far from home. It really makes you appreciate the sacrifices, these miners and their families made.
Absolutely. It challenges the romanticized image of the adventurous prospector.
Right.
Behind those stories of discovery and potential riches were real lives filled with hardship, loss, and the constant threat of danger.
Their stories are a powerful reminder that history is about more than just, dates and events. It's about the lives of real people who faced extraordinary challenges.
Exactly. And while their individual experiences varied greatly, they all shared this common thread: the courage to leave their homes, the determination to build a better life, and the enduring legacy they left behind,
Right.
both in Tsumeb and in Herdorf.
So we have these German miners in this remote part of Africa, How did they interact with the local population, the Ovambo and Herero people?
Ah, that's a really important part of the story.
Yeah,
And it's where the complexity of the historical context comes in. We know that the German miners relied heavily on a local workforce,
right.
but the dynamics of that relationship were deeply influenced by, well, the racial attitudes at the time.
And we see those attitudes reflected in some of the photographs from that era, right?
Yeah.
There's one that really struck me, the Fröhliche Pfingsten photo.
Yeah, I know the one.
It shows white miners posing next to locals with those words, Happy Pentecost, painted on their skin. It's a really jarring image, to say the least.
It is. It's disturbing, really. That photo and others from that time, they show us the racist ideologies that were just, well, they were everywhere in colonial society.
Yeah.
And even if there were instances of personal connection, and respect, the system itself was built on racial hierarchy and exploitation. Yeah, it's a tough reality to confront. You have these stories of ambition and hardship and even friendship, but you can't escape the backdrop of colonialism and its deeply problematic legacy.
It's been a fascinating journey, but before we wrap up, I'm curious about Tsumeb itself. What's it like today?
Well, fast forward to the present day, and Tsumeb is still a mining town, but it's also known as the Garden City of Namibia.
Oh, wow.
It's this fascinating juxtaposition, vibrant jacaranda trees blooming against the backdrop of a harsh desert landscape.
It sounds like a place of contrasts.
Yeah,
A blend of industrial grit and natural beauty, shaped by the legacy of those early miners.
precisely. And while the Tsumeb mine itself closed in 1996, its impact is still felt today, not just in the town's economy, but also in the cultural fabric of the region.
It's amazing to think that a place so far away is connected to Herdorf through this shared history of mining and human endeavor.
It speaks to the interconnectedness of our world and the ways in which seemingly distant places can be linked by human stories and shared experiences.
And those stories, like the ones we've explored today, they have a way of capturing our imagination and reminding us of the enduring power of the human spirit. Yeah, it's really remarkable how these stories from over a century ago, they can still resonate with us today. It's a testament to that enduring power of human connection and the way our lives are intertwined, even across, continents and generations.
And it's fascinating how objects can serve as like these tangible links to the past, bridging those gaps of time and distance. Remember Neuer's Stufensammlung, his collection of minerals?
Oh, yes. He mentioned selling it after returning to Germany. Makes you wonder where those pieces ended up. Did they stay in Germany, or did some of them perhaps travel even further afield?
It's a great question, isn't it? Perhaps some of those minerals, they found their way into other collections, becoming part of this larger narrative that extends far beyond, Neuer's own experiences.
It's almost as if those minerals themselves are carrying the story forward, silently whispering tales of adventure and hardship to those who know how to listen.
Precisely. And that brings us back to you, dear listener. What if you have a piece of Tsumeb in your possession? Perhaps a grandparent brought back a souvenir, or you stumbled upon a polished stone at a market.
It's a tantalizing thought, isn't it, that seemingly ordinary object might have a connection to this incredible story of the Herdorf miners, a tangible link to a time and place that shaped not only their lives, but also, the landscape of Tsumeb itself.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the world of the Herdorf miners, we invite you to consider this. What stories are hidden in plain sight around you? What objects in your own home might hold a connection to a fascinating chapter in history?
It's a great reminder that exploration and discovery aren't limited to, far-off lands or dusty archives. Sometimes the most incredible journeys, they begin right in our own backyards, or even on our own bookshelves.
Indeed. And as we've seen with the Herdorf miners, those journeys, they often reveal not only fascinating facts, but also, profound insights into the human spirit and the interconnectedness of our world.
This deep dive has been a real eye-opener for me, and I hope you've enjoyed the journey as much as we have. It's been a privilege to delve into this remarkable story and uncover the legacy of the Herdorf miners, a legacy that continues to shine brightly in both Tsumeb and Herdorf, and perhaps even in your own home.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning. You never know what treasures you might uncover.
I hope this deep dive has left you with a sense of wonder, a desire to learn more, and a deeper appreciation for just how connected our world is, past and present. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep diving deep.